Pokemon Horizons. So far, this series has gained a somewhat huge fanbase recently. Characters from Paldea are showing up, the show is gaining a lot more interest, and fans are hyping up for the future content of this series. This is of course if you've been watching the show, but when I was watching this show, I found a strange connection towards Horizons. But this connection wasn't something I was expecting to find when watching. Rather, it was a connection that kind of shocked me. And to be honest, it kind of makes me question the characters that we love so well. So before I tell you what I found, I just want to warn you that this can possibly change the way you look at Liko Roy and Dot. So please, proceed with caution, and let me explain what's going on. Ever since the start of Pokemon Horizons, I've always been fond of the colors Liko and Roy are presented as. Liko had a more blue color to her, while Roy's color was more focused on red. It reminded me of a character I know who was Penny, who also had a hairstyle that was red and blue. But a couple episodes later, we meet Dot, and she not only had a purplish hairstyle, but her characteristics were very similar to Penny's in a way. Dot and Penny just had a lot in common. Both were good at tech, liked sweets, had messy rooms, and even had parents which they resented. Seems like the ideal duo to have together, right? But it made me wonder, if they are ideally similar, could there be any similarities to Liko and Roy too? I started to poke around a bit around the series, and then it led me to find the realities behind these guys. So, ever since the beginning of Horizons, Liko was always referring to that one phrase her grandmother told her, which was finding her first step. However though, in a separate storyline in Pokemon Masters, Penny surprisingly was also told about taking her first step when it came to opening up to more people. Just seeing that message hit me hard. How was it that Penny and Liko are both surprisingly being told the same quote in two different timelines? It almost feels as if that little message Penny said in the postgame was actually an important nod to Horizons in some way. It then made me wonder, how close is Penny really to the main cast of Horizons? And then it led me to find a few more times where Liko referred to Penny. So one time Penny was referenced was when Liko admitted to Molly that she wasn't really an outsider. This relates to when Penny said herself she wasn't the biggest adventurer when we were entering Area Zero. Another time Penny was referenced was when Liko decided to surrender at the Galar Gym. Might not know this, but before Penny began battling, she would always be afraid to battle because she didn't want to hurt her Pokemon, and because of that, she never fully understood the meaning of battling back then, just like how Liko is pretty much right now. And this kind of leads to my final reference, which is that they both have a strong heart for their friends and the Pokemon they meet, which I kind of feel is heartwarming and sweet to know. So now, as much as it may not look like it, Roy and Penny also have the moments too. However, some of these hints were a bit harder to find than the others. A good example of this would be Roy's personality compared to Penny's. Roy has a more spirited side to it, while Penny is more on the quieter side. Polar opposites, right? Well, you may think that, but actually, there was that one time. During the DLC, when Penny became possessed by Petrot, Kira makes a comment saying that she appeared to be more worked up than everyone else. Now in Petrot's dex entry, it says that it can bring the desires and capabilities of people's personalities when they eat its Monchi, meaning that Penny could secretly have a personality that is similar to Roy's. And this is only one example. There's a couple more hits I felt like this too, like Roy's quest to hunt down Rayquaza. Rayquaza is a very strong foe for Roy to fight alone. So because of that, it's likely his friends and the Rising Bull Tacos will give him a hand, making the battle more like a raid. And a raid is something Penny enjoys doing back in Galar. Another foreign reference I found was how Roy likes to sing. I don't think it appeals to anyone, but for some reason, it gives me kind of a callback to Penny's battle theme. It's not a really good reference, but it's just something I thought of. And lastly though, a very important reference I found was how Roy discovers the fairy tale about Lucius. This fairy tale he finds is a fairy tale he has heard as a kid about an ancient adventurer who traveled with 60 Pokemon into a place he calls paradise. However, in Galar, there was another fairy tale that was said to be about Sylveon taking down a very dreadful dragon Pokemon set in Sylveon's dex entry. And to no surprise, Penny actually knows it. So it's just amazing that not only does Dot reflect Penny, but also Liko and Roy refer to her in a more or less obvious way too. And it's even more amazing that eventually I've come into a couple more hints that are more focused on what Liko and Roy and Dot encountered than experience, such as the Palafin episode. You might not know this, but Penny actually loves heroes, and in her room, there's a special poster that shows a hero named Palafin, the Paladin Protector. It's an obvious hint to the whole episode since Palafin was the main focus. And finally, the whole Rising Voltaggers team having this special similarity to Team Star. To explain this one, just think about removing the main characters from these groups. So by removing Liko Roy and Dot from the Rising Voltaggers, we would be left with 5 members: Freed, Molly, Ludlow, Murdoch, and Orla. And if we remove Penny from Team Star, we are also left with 5 members: Giacomo, Ortega, Eri, Mela, and Atticus. All teams left with 5 members that each play a vital role within their group and could probably work well on their own. So after telling all my hints, I found there are about 15 hints that are related to Penny. 15 hints in under about 56 episodes. That's a lot of hints against this series. Usually it'd be okay if there were like at least a few, but this amount is a little over the top if you ask me. I believe it's a lot to dig into in the amount of episodes we've gotten so far. And to be honest, I think it's even crazier if you understood episode 56. Episode 56 is not only Penny's first real dive into the series, but it's also the episode on how you can see her reflect the trio vice versa. Like how Dot admits to struggling with talking to people, a similarity just given to us. Another one is how Penny protects Terapagos. A lot of people think that when Penny showed Dot her bag, she gets asked that question a lot, which I could say could be true. But in reality, I think she was more protected to Terapagos, because if you look at her form from the start, her body is facing away from Dot while carrying Terapagos. She could have shown Dot the bag instead without fear, but since Terapagos is rare, I think she was instead being more secure, because she doesn't even know who Dot is really. And the final relatable moment I found is when Dot and Penny find the Scarlet book. This situation nearly replicates to the moment when Liko and Roy found the other fairy tale about Lucius. It's funny how both books end up being depicted as fairy tales, and now, not only do they replicate each other, but they now provide a similar scenario between the two sets of characters. And plus, it should be noted that when Dot was looking at the old culture books, she referred to one of the books as a period for 1 billion years ago, which is also known as a ancient Jiggly book, more known as Screamtail. This is one of the Pokemon Penny encountered in Area Zero in Pokemon Scarlet. So it just comes to show how closely related she is with Liko Roy and Dot. She shares many connections to them. And to be honest, it's kind of upsetting. If you don't know, Penny always used to feel left out of things, and felt she didn't really fit in with most people. That's why she mostly stays hidden. She kind of feels more comfortable alone. Well, until she started making friends, of course. But now seeing that Horizons just runs through with 3 characters having similar personalities to her, it makes me feel as if they just split her character into parts. And you can kind of see it through their hair colors and personalities. Like, Liko is a more socially awkward type of person. Roy has a very fun and energetic side to him. And of course, Dot has a very introverted, tech-savvy lifestyle. These things are what make Penny who she actually is. Because deep down, she is socially awkward. She does have the thrill from excitement. And most of all, she is really skilled with tech stuff. So deep down, in my heart, this is why I cannot accept Horizons for what it is. Pokemon Horizons just copies the characteristics of someone else, and for me, it's messed up because of what this character had to suffer through. So I hope that maybe they can rethink about continuing this series, because in reality, it's just stepping down on someone else. And I think this is where I should stop. Look, I know I'm not popular like most theorists, but I do know why I'm fighting for this character. We deep down are very similar. The only difference, though, is that she gives me hope that maybe I can change. And possibly, I maybe could change her as well. That's why I looked into her so much. It was because I thought maybe there was a chance for redemption. And I'm amazed I even went this far. It's really amazing, and I only wish to gain support on this. So thank you for sticking through all the way. And be sure to check out all my older stuff, because I worked hard on it. And all I wished was for people to understand the truth behind this character. So thank you, and see you next time.